Hey everyone, I'm Luke,
And Max?
and welcome back to Upside Down Thoughts podcast. And here we are for the Goodyear 400 from Darlington. So, obviously, we're a little bit behind on the podcast, so um, this is the second podcast coming out this week, but we're trying to get caught up just so you guys know. But let's kick it off right with qualifying, where we had William Byron capture his second pole of the 2025 season, and with Ryan Preece joining him on that front row. A super interesting uh, kind of a surprising qualifier to get on the front row with Ryan Preece, who we haven't seen much speed in qualifying from this year.
Yeah, it sure is. Ryan Preece hasn't really had the qualifying speed. He's had the race speed, but he struggled to start up there. With the problem with some drivers is, they say they qualify in the back and then they're like, we have a fast car and we have to move up throughout the race. But it's kind of been the opposite for Ryan Preece so far this year. So it's really good to see him qualify up front. You mentioned William Byron on the pole. No surprise there. He was wrecked out of a Darlington race a few years ago by Logano. And he's going to be up there and he's going to be a problem all day for his fellow competitors. But moving on from there, we have three Toyotas and Alliance teammates. We got Hamlin, Briscoe, Wallace, 3 through 5, with Cindric, Reddick, Busch, Blaney, and McDowell rounding out the top 10.
Yeah, and also was throwback weekend, so a bunch of cool throwback paint schemes we got to see this year, mainly from Hendrick. I saw a lot of cool ones from them. But you mentioned 4 Toyotas in the top 10 with Reddick, Wallace, Briscoe, and Hamlin. Super good qualifying from JGR and 23XI for Darlington, which they always do. Christopher Bell in 17th, not the best qualifying, but still in the top 20. You really can't complain. They always put on good qualifyings at the short tracks they're known to. Same with Hendrick as well, with the 4 drivers.
Yeah, and you mentioned Hendrick qualifying well at your short tracks, which Darlington is, and kind of brings me to this point. In 19th, you see Kyle Larson kind of marred back in traffic. He'll be starting on the inside of row 10, so he'll have a very challenging day ahead for him, as we'll come to see, and it'll kind of end up being challenging in a way different than moving towards the front. But anywho, moving on from there, you see some others as the Wood Brothers 21, Josh Berry in 24th. He's been strong this year. We've liked to mention him, and we like to see if he could keep it going here. And then a few others, Nemechek coming off the strong run, as well as the Hendrick 48 is Bowman back in 33rd.
Yeah, and just one more I want to mention with Ross Chastain in 25th, one of his better tracks at Darlington, and I have just not seen the speed from him really in the last 2 years, along with his teammate of Danilo Suarez in the 99 from Trackhouse. I feel like they've just kind of fallen off this late last year and kind of the beginning of this year. So hopefully they can pick it up and find some speed as we move into kind of the middle of the season.
Yeah, you really haven't heard his name a lot this year. He was one that, right when the Gen 7 came out, you heard his name a lot for the wrong reason, especially at WWT. He had his run-ins with Elliott and Hamlin, and his fight at Kansas with Gregson the year after, I believe it was. So, he's been kind of his name's been thrown in for the wrong reasons, and really hasn't been heard much this year. So you hope that that's a team we mentioned, just like Keselowski and Busch in the last podcast, that a team that can turn it around really after getting into the back 60% of the season here, and see if they can lock themselves in the playoffs with a win or at least point their way in.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty much it I got for qualifying. Got anything else?
I've got nothing. I'll let you get right into the race.
All right. So, like I mentioned, throwback weekend, you always get a bunch of cool schemes from some of the top teams, just to honor some of the past drivers. So, just a little quick 7. I just want to know what your favorite throwback scheme was, if you have one.
Yeah, I do. It's got to be Kyle Larson with the Labonte throwback.
It's a good one.
I
That's
love
a great
that.
one.
The Frosted Flakes with the current Hendrick HendrickCars.com combo. That was a sweet looking car.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, I'm gonna kind of steal your thunder here, starting the race. And just as I mentioned, my favorite throwback, we see Byron lead from the outside with Preece on the inside on the original green flag. And 4 laps later, my throwback's already gone. Kyle Larson spins, exiting turn 2 from right where he started in 19th, and will have pretty hard contact with the inside wall, forcing him to head back to the garage. If you have any opinion on this, I think this was quite surprising to see from this driver of the 5 car.
Yeah, and you mentioned in qualifying he didn't have the best qualifying effort, and really even in practice he didn't do too well, which was kind of odd. But just kind of a self spin off of two, and just a really unfortunate mistake that you don't see Kyle Larson make a lot. And how thin the backstretch is at Darlington. That inside wall comes up quick, and he just could not hit the brakes fast enough, and kaboom, smash the wall. Just pretty bad mistake on his part. Just overcorrected the car way too much, and kind of similar to the wreck last year in the playoffs at Atlanta. Just a simple, not really a simple, but just kind of an odd mistake, an odd driver error you see from Larson.
Yeah, you're kind of spot on with that. And I kind of wanted to mention, you mentioned him hitting the brakes exiting turn 2. And compared to most other tracks, for those listeners that might not know, exiting a corner at Darlington is kind of like no other track basically on the NASCAR schedule. With how the turns work, 1 and 2 are different from 3 and 4. With 1 and 2 being a little faster with a tighter exit, and 3 and 4 having uh, a tighter entrance with all the air packing with an easier exit, due to being a sharper turn, and the turn being a little slower in 3 and 4 as well. So I think this could have had a lot to do with the air in front of him. It mentioned he's starting 19th, and I think he's so used to being up the front where that air is not too bad, and I think that almost might be just a mistake.
Mhm.
As you mentioned, of him not running back there and saying, "Oh crap, it's not easy running back here." We kind of not make fun of the other drivers that are always starting in the back. I'm not going to throw out any names, but and they struggle to move forward, but it's not easy. The air in the back is miserable, for lack of better words. And so the further you are towards the front, the easier it is to move up. And I mentioned the track not being easy in the first place. So I think this is just a mistake on Larson. He comes over the radio and says, my bad, guys. Like, he knows he made a mistake, and he's not really sure what went wrong. But I think that's something that they will go on to evaluate, and they'll learn how to get better when they screw up and find themselves in those situations.
Yeah, for sure. That was spot on. I like the way you mentioned, the air circulation when you're running in the middle pack at Darlington with how thin the corners are, and there's really only two kind of 1.5 lines you can really run off restarts. It's chaotic, and it whips your car back and forth. And Larson's uh, not really a guy that runs this far back in Darlington, so I guess you can kind of use that as an excuse. But there was no saving this thing. I mean, the air off getting cut off in front of him just completely whipped his car into the inside wall, and he would have to get towed back to the garage, but he would have unlimited time as long as the race was still going on to fix that car up and get back on track as soon as possible.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct with what you added on there. But moving on from there, we'll see about half the field pit. It'll be about a split decision, with Bubba Wallace getting off of pit road first, and he will line up 17th. Uh, and Blaney will run into a little bit of trouble on pit road. His Darlington trouble is kind of every year. He had trouble in both Darlington races last year, and he's a name that you really never hear finishing up front, besides running up front at Darlington, and his struggles at the Lady in Black will continue.
Yep. Yeah.
So moving on from there, we see Byron on the inside with Byron on the outside with Cindric on the inside, with Byron clearing for the lead, while Priest will get by Cindric as well, moving up into second as we look for a green flag run.
Yeah, and just I wanted to add on. You mentioned Blaney coming in this race. This is, in my opinion, by far his worst track. One top 10 finish in the number of races that he's run here, and over half the races are DNF from him. So hopefully he can kind of get the right foot in this track as the years go on. But moving into the green flag run, like you said, um, Byron and Cindric still in the front row. But quickly, William Byron would assert his dominance over Priest, with a 1.6 extended lead. But quickly, as this kind of semi green flag run starts, it would very quickly end. Hocevar, who made contact with the wall earlier in the green flag run, would self spin at a 3, due to a flat right rear, so it would quickly end that green flag run. Unfortunate for Byron because, at Darlington, you want to really get those green flag runs rolling to see how your car works in the lead for sure for Byron. But unfortunately, another caution would fly.
Yeah, we really haven't seen a green flag run. There's been a lack of them so far this year. With Martinsville, the week prior to Darlington, I don't think we saw a single green flag run over 75 laps. And when you're talking 75 laps at Martinsville, that's much different than 75 at Talladega. So
Yeah.
I would basically say your equivalent for 75 at Martinsville is probably equivalent to about 3 at Talladega. it's it's
Yeah.
it's quite a drastic change. So it's really been an interesting thing watching the races so far this year and kind of how the cautions have been trending. But anyway, kind of looking more at the host of our incident here, I see none other than a flat tire. Darlington absolutely chews tires, so
Mhm.
I don't think it'll be the last incident we end up seeing at Darlington in this race and in the second race as well later in the season.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, Darlington, if you guys ever heard the Darlington stripes, that's just basically when you hit the wall and it chews your tires up completely. And that's pretty much just what we saw him just make a mistake, hit the wall, and then that tire just completely exploded. And bringing out the caution. It's very normal at a track like this.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
moving on from that, on the restart, no one would pit. Um, Still, William Byron, but Kyle Busch would get to the front as Ryan Preece would choose to restart behind Byron as he wanted that preferred inside lane and to kind of see what Byron was doing in front of him. Uh, but as soon as we get the restart going, Ryan Preece and Chase Briscoe would advance their way up through the field. So Priest was definitely making better decisions going on that bottom, following Byron for sure. But William Byron would still, I mean, just continue his dominancy here to start the race, extending his lead to 3.7 seconds over Priest. And really, no one had any answers for him to start this race. It was kind of crazy to watch how just dominant, like I mentioned, that he was getting through the corner as fast as he was. And I mean, in 15 laps, he had over a 3.5-second lead.
Yeah, this is an absolute assertion of dominance here by William Byron. He puts down a great lap, gets right on the pole, and takes off. He gets out to a second and a half before the yellow waves. Now here he is out to a 4-second lead, over second. So he's absolutely dominating this race to start. But quickly, we will manage to see several drivers start to fade. The tire problem that we mentioned earlier. You mentioned the Darlington stripe getting up into the wall, chewing the tires. And these drivers that we'll see fade will include Austin Cindric, Kyle Busch, who was running up front with Preece and Byron, Briscoe, and Gibbs. Gibbs falling all the way back to 30th, so it really affecting him real bad. But no later do we see tire fall off begin. We will see Hocevar go around after contact with Riley Herbst on the front stretch as Byron will, or I'm sorry, as Herbst is trying to pass Byron to get one of his 2 laps back.
Yeah, and like you just said, Hocevar, it kind of looked like he was gonna spin into the inside near pit road off of 4, but then he kind of overcorrected it like Larson did in the beginning of the race and took Riley Herbst with him. Nothing Herbst could do, just had to kind of hold it against the fence. But just kind of another really really easy mistake to do for Hocevar, and it's gonna happen. He's a young driver. And Darlington is, in my opinion, one of the hardest tracks on the schedule. And it's just unfortunate for Herbst, who was having a solid day up to this point. But that would bring up the caution on lap 82.
Yeah, you mentioned unfortunate, and this is Hocevar's second incident. The first not even his fault, and the second here, a little more. You can definitely blame it more on him, but not a great start to the day for Carson Hocevar in that 77 team. But
Yeah.
moving on from there, we see everyone on the lead lap pit as Nemechek and Cody Ware will take the wave around, and Byron and Preece will lead us to green once again on lap 89 for a 1-lap shootout to the end of the stage.
We've seen a lot of these, I feel like, so far. Like last week at Martinsville, I feel like we had like a 1 or 2 lap shootout in stage 1 with Logano winning. So
Right, we did. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting trend. We mentioned the cautions and the lack of green flag runs. It's been a very trendy start to the season here.
Yeah, I feel like stage one is always bringing out wrecks and crazy pit strategy and stuff. So it's cool to see. But
Yeah, for sure.
Husafar would get the free pass as he was the first car um, in that lucky dog position. Byron would still lead with Bubba Wallace and Priest still behind him. Um, but obviously, no one's going to pass Byron on this one lap shootout. He cruises home to get his stage win for stage one. But just want to quick point out this thing for Bubba Wallace. He has the third most stage points accumulated this season through all drivers in the field, which is crazy. But it's not surprising at all. I feel like we've mentioned his name in the top 5 of each stage that we've mentioned so far through these podcasts. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, he's winning stages at these tracks that you would never think to hear the 23's name at. For instance, I'm going to go back to Coda, a road course. Imagine hearing Bubba Wallace's name at a road course and actually not for wrecking a car. You know,
Right.
it's great to see Bubba Wallace, his name being thrown out for winning a stage at Coda. You know, we continue to see him absolutely piling up these playoff points, or another way of saying stage points here at Darlington, a track that's very different from these road courses, super speedways. No matter where he seems to be, he's racking up these points.
Yeah, definitely. But Byron would lead all of the 97 laps in the first stage. Just insane stuff. Just just absolutely crazy. One of the best stage performances I've seen all season from any driver. But everyone would come in, do their pit cycles, get their 4 tires and fuel. Byron would still have the lead as he would get off the race pit road first, and Wallace would move into second, and Priest would still stay right behind Byron um, as we start off stage two.
Yeah, going back to the end of stage one, I wanted to mention this. I kind of heard this through the grapevine earlier, but that this is the first time Darlington every lap has been led by the same driver since the beginning of stage racing. This is huge. You know, Byron has been absolutely dominant here. This is the first time we have seen a driver like this at Darlington basically since the early 2010s, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon era. So amazing stuff here by the 2014.
Yeah, no, it's unreal, unbelievable. I was almost getting tired of seeing his car out there, and I think Fox was too because they were barely showing him towards the later laps during that green flag run. But it's crazy to see.
Yeah, for sure. But moving on from there, you mentioned the restart. Byron and Priest leading them back to green, and we'll see Reddick get by Wallace, moving up to second about 10 laps after the start of the green flag run. And once we see Reddick get around Wallace, we'll see him come up to within about half a second of William Byron. And the green flag run will continue all the way up until around lap 135 when we're going to see the 6 car, Brad Keselowski. The struggles will continue after a right rear lug nut comes off and he will crawl to pit road.
Yeah, just a very unfortunate wreck, and not his fault at all. Um, it looked like the actual wheel, like nut, just flew off of that left rear, and then that obviously knocks the wheel loose, and there's nothing you can do but hold on and hold the brakes. So just a pit road error, a pit crew error, and man, I mean, you just cannot give this guy a break. You know, he's worked so hard in the off season. He is just not. I mean, he can't buy um, a top 10 finish right now.
Yeah, and you mentioned a top 10. He's been lacking even top 15s, top 20s. They've been tough to be found for that 6 team. And, you know, this is champion of the sport, Brad Keselowski, we're talking about. You know, we mentioned we're like, oh, this guy just can't break the top 10 for anything. But you can say that about some other drivers. This is a champion of the sport. This guy is caliber to be running top 5, top 10 every week. And just the lack of speed that we've been seeing from this car and just the amount of problems that have been compounding for this team is almost becoming concerning as a whole. Just
Yeah.
you know, not only for this team but almost for that organization. Is this going to start happening to that 60 car in the 17?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I saw a lot of stuff on social media after the race, and it was like, does RFK or can RFK afford 3 cars, or are they, you know, under budgeting one of the teams? And I don't know. It could be a possibility that the six crew might be underfunded or not, getting the secondary parts. But I think we're just gonna have to keep watching this season and see maybe he can break out of this slump. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little too early to tell. But man, if he doesn't start picking it up quick, he can just chalk this season away.
Yeah, it'd be so unfortunate for a six team. And we mentioned this making the last podcast for Martinsville, and we almost sound like broken records. I feel like we're making the same points, but these races have been so similar for similar drivers, or I say similar, but for the same drivers. Uh, this very similar outcomes for these guys, and it almost feels like this beginning half of the season is almost on repeat, just at a different location in the U.S. So
Yeah.
I think it's something that I keep saying they'll figure it out, and you can only hope at this point. It was a thing that we were saying earlier, and we're like, they'll definitely figure it out. They'll figure it out. But you mentioned it. This could become a chalk the season thing if they don't figure it out soon.
Yeah. I mean, one race piles onto another, and bad finish after bad finish, and all your confidence goes out the window. So I'm interested to see how it's going to go. But man, I can only hope that he picks it up because it sucks to see a veteran, go out like this. But as the caution flies, Busher receives the free pass as he is in that lucky dog position. But multiple drivers would take the wave around opportunity, and a bunch of guys would come in here to pit, get their pitch stop strategy, and hopefully have another green flag run as William Byron and Logano would lead us.
Yeah, of course. Now we're back onto a green flag run here, hopefully to make it to the end of stage two. And as the green flag is dropped, we'll see Byron jump out in front of Logano yet again. And Blaney is going to brush the turn four wall from sixth and continue going. This is just as we mentioned earlier, getting deep into a run here. We're about 20 laps into a run on hurting tires, and he'll get his stripe there about 30 laps prior to the end of the stage. And I want to mention this as well. Back from
Mm-hmm.
lap 5, Kyle Larson spin. He's back out on track now with the new NASCAR policy that we mentioned in the previous podcast, and how this is a great thing to keep as many cars on track as possible. Larson is back, and he is meeting minimum speed, and he will try to get as many laps numbered up as he can, or I should say logged, before the end of the race, and see if he can potentially pick up any spots on wrecked cars such as the 6.
Yeah, and if people are wondering, why this is an important role, or he's like, oh, he's 100 laps down, what does it matter? Well, as we saw last year, every single point, every single spot matters. So for that regular season, points leader, you get a bunch of extra bonus points for the playoffs, which he missed out on. But as long as you make minimum speed, you can continue racing, which he is doing. But as we continue this green flag run, we'd see kind of Ryan Blaney and Christopher Bell battle for a long time. Blaney would take the spot, and ultimately Byron, no surprise, would secure the stage win, with Logano, Hamlin, Blaney in fourth, and Josh Berry getting a very, very solid top 5 stage finish.
Yeah, that's spot on for stage 2. The domination for William Byron continues, and we saw a similar trend at Martinsville with Denny Hamlin winning stage 2, and the question is, will Byron be able to hold on and win this one here at Darlington the week after, and say, you know what, the 11 can do that one week. This is my week.
Yeah,
So
but
moving on from there, we'll see the green flag come off again after everyone on the lead lap will pit. And no sooner is the green flag dropped, Josh Berry and the 21 Wood brothers, he goes for a spin and will make really hard contact with the inside wall exiting turn 2.
yeah, this one was crazy. He spun so fast out of turn 2 and smashed the inside wall. One of the hardest Darlington crashes I've seen in a little bit, for this next gen car, I should say, at least. Just a really unfortunate wreck as he finished, got stage points in both stages, and was looking to have another great race, but he would have a ton of damage after this one.
Yeah, for sure. And that this is a topic I want to kind of stop on here. The safety of the next gen car has been drastically improved. If this crash happens 2 years ago, I guarantee you Josh Berry has a concussion and misses about 6 races.
Oh, for sure. Well, I
So
mean,
I think this is a great job by NASCAR to be securing these cars better, and after a hard hit like this to obviously be able to walk away, but get in the car next week as we know, we're a few weeks behind on these podcasts, and we know that he will get in the car next week, and it's good to see that the drivers are doing that.
yeah, definitely. They made a ton of different safety changes over the years with this car, but kind of similar with the Kyle Larson wreck. That inside wall comes up super fast, especially because the backstretch is still kind of banked a little bit, so you're kind of going downhill and then smashing that inside wall. So both hard hits for Larson and Barry, but they walked away completely fine. And Larson's still racing, like we mentioned.
Yeah. Well, moving on from there, we'll see yet another Darlington restart with a Byron Bell front row.
Yeah, I mean, Byron, little stat that I forgot to go over. I'm in my notes here. Kind of at the end of stage two, William Byron, um, is the second only person ever in the stage era to lead every single lap in the first two stages. Previous person was Chase Elliott at Martinsville in 2022, but like we mentioned, just an absolutely insane day from William Byron, and hopefully he continue and maybe get a win. We'll see. We'll see. But he would lead with Christopher Bell on his outside. So two titans going at it on the front row. But Bell would just slowly fade as we start the green flag run, and he would fall down to over half a second. But Alex Bowman, who qualified in 33rd, a very, very poor qualifying for that Hendrick Chevy, would make contact out of 3 and 4 to get his Darlington stripe. But he would make it to pit road perfectly fine, obviously with a flat tire. Unfortunate for him.
Yeah, this has kind of just been one of those nightmarish weeks for the 48 team. As you mentioned, qualified in the back, and he's been in the back all race and makes contact, nearly spins, exiting turn 4, and eventually makes it on the pit road. So it's an unfortunate, not per se ending, because he will be back out on track with 4 new tires, but to see him that far back at Darlington and with that Hendrick material is really unfortunate here for that 48 team.
Yeah, definitely. But as that kind of all happens, he kind of opens the gate for a bunch of guys to start their green flag pit stops as everyone's kind of getting really, really low on fuel. We'd see Priest coming from 12th, JHN and SVG come in, Logano from 5th, a bunch of Fords and Toyotas, and then the Chevys would obviously make their way into pit road, starting with Chase Elliott, and then William Byron, and all the leaders would come in. And Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace would be the last people to make it onto pit road as they were trying to wait out for a caution. Never happened. So they took the gamble there. But as the pit cycle would cycle out, William Byron and Joey Logano would actually not be in the lead, as Tyler Reddick, who we're going to talk about a lot at the end of this race, would merge his way into the lead.
Yeah, and just as we see that happen, Byron is going to nudge his way past Logano. He'll move up to 3rd, but by this point, Reddick is out over Bell by 6 seconds. Bell as well jumped Byron on pit road, and Byron right now is like, "What the heck? I've led every lap of this thing." So he's quite confused. He's yelling at Rudy Fugle, his crew chief, and saying, "What did we screw up on here? We had a fast stop, but he didn't speed. He had a great drive down pit road, and basically begging to find out what his team did wrong here." But moving on from there, we will see Blaney get up by Bell and Byron and pass both to move up to 2nd behind Tyler Reddick, and the gap will be about 5 seconds maintained between them as we approach lap 280.
Yeah, and just to mention Blaney getting past Bell, about 8 or so laps later, he would close that gap into 3 seconds. So Blaney is super, or driving this car super hard as he wants this one bad. After all the horrible luck that he's had this year, he is determined to get this lead. And just another 3 laps later, Reddick would brush the wall, make a big mistake. As he knows Blaney's coming. and he would cut that gap down to 0.3 seconds. So we are going to have a battle here coming into the closing laps of this race.
Yeah, no later do you mention Battle and Tyler Reddick choking the lead away. Blaney will get around the 45 of Tyler Reddick, and you're a Blaney fan. You're saying, yes, he's finally going to win. And deja vu strikes.
Yep. And I'll let you make your points first because I'm going to have a little bit to say on this one.
Yeah, so what we're going to see here on lap 290 with 6 to go here at Darlington, we're going to see Kyle Larson have the exact same spin with his fixed race car exiting turn 2. And I mentioned deja vu. It'll literally look exactly the same, and Ryan Blaney is basically fuming in his car, knowing he had this race practically in the bag as Tyler Reddick had choked it away and was falling back, and now everything's going to get loaded up and they're going to fire off again on another restart.
Yeah, so, Blaney used up a bunch of his stuff to get to Reddick, and then eventually when he made that mistake, Larson, who is a bunch of laps down, obviously just trying to run out there, get as many laps on there, maybe get a few points back. He checks up way, way, way harder than needed. And Bubba Wallace just has absolutely no time to react and slams the complete bumper off of his car and sends him into that wall. And at first I was so mad because, I can't blame it on NASCAR for adding this rule change. It benefits everyone. But, at some point you have to put the blame on Larson. And, I think it's because he checked up that hard because, his car was, I don't want to say it was not fit to be on the racetrack because it made minimum speed and that's the rule. But man, I
It
mean,
was heavily damaged, and it
it
wasn't
was,
wasn't turning to max
I mean,
potential.
it was it was going slower than slow, and it was not turning, and it's kind of, and you would have got the same amount of points if you just never even tried it, but I understand why he did, and I don't want to say it's selfish on that 5 team because it's not, because they're just trying to do all they can. But man, I mean, come on, dude. As a Blaney fan, I'm 100% biased in saying this, but dude, like, I mean, just throw my guy a bone, please. But
Yeah.
it's pros and cons
Blaney
to,
has seen it all this year. He
yeah.
he
I mean,
really has. He's
uh,
he's gone down in every way known to man.
yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to every rule change, and I'm sure it's going to benefit Blaney at some point in these next few years if they keep the rules. So I'm not going to complain about it anymore. That's just my thoughts. You know, don't blame Larson. I understand that he's fighting a race car and doing everything he can to help out his team, but just sucks. But Blaney used up all his stuff, so spoiler alert, he's not going to win this race. Sorry to break anyone's bubble who didn't watch the race. He's not winning. There's no chance. He completely burned his tires. He's dead tired after driving the
He was
hell out of the
driving
race
the
car.
wheels off that thing to catch Tyler Reddick. He was 5 seconds back
Yeah, I mean,
in
he's
30 laps, and he
gassed.
puts it all back, and gets right to his bumper and passes him just as Larson spins. Well, of course, I'm not going to let you drop the subject this quickly. There was a question I wanted that I've kind of
Yep,
had stirring in my head that I've been
go ahead.
meaning to ask you. So you mentioned NASCAR rule changes. Do you think, while implementing this rule, that NASCAR needs to, to take a look and potentially change minimum speed for Darlington to get back out on track?
I think that's a good question. Very good question. I don't know what the minimum speed requirements are, so I don't want to make too many points. But I think they should have another rule set in place using kind of SMT, and if the car is just not turning or the damage is interfering with the car too much, even though they're making minimum speed and it's causing driver an unsafe car on the track, then I feel like
Like checkups
NASCAR
and
has to
corners.
step in. Yeah, exactly. I feel like they kind of have, NASCAR has, you can't just send them to the garage and then be like, okay, the car can make minimum speed. Let's just go out there, put it back out there, and then have the car, being held by JB Weld and two-part epoxy and then completely explode on, like, that literally could happen. So I think they got to seriously. I like the rule. I'm not bashing on the rule. I think it's a great change, but I feel like NASCAR has to step in a little bit more and kind of push this narrative that we can't just have race cars hanging on by threads making minimum speed out there just to get a few extra points.
Right. It's not a rule that needs total fixing, but it's definitely a rule that needs improvement and
Yeah,
to be spruced up.
for sure.
Especially for certain tracks, you have tracks like Talladega or Daytona where you can kind of just get out of the way if you're off pace by that much, but you're able to make minimum speed. So maybe it doesn't come as a case of NASCAR needing to raise their minimum speed overall, but they might just need to look at some minute or some different tracks where the racing is different. Darlington very tight, and
Hmm.
kind of say, well, you mentioned the SMT data and say, well, that car's not turning. He needs to be black flagged and taken off the track for
Yeah,
the safety of other drivers.
yeah, perfect. That's great. But moving on, everyone would come down pit road. Wallace would get the free pass, and Hamlin would say, "Thank you, Kyle Larson," as he leads his way off pit road, followed by Reddick, Byron, and Blaney. And spoiler alert, Denny Hamlin would lead that overtime restart and just run away with the victory. Probably the most undeserving victor we have this season, but he would say, "Thank you, Kyle Larson," in his interview, and take that checker flag for back-to-back wins.
Yeah, for sure. We call these around here. I know our favorite line is the Mickey Mouse win here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's oh wow, it fell right into my hands. But I'm kind of gonna look the opposite way of Mickey Mouse here for Denny Hamlin because he might have Mickey Moused it personally, but I think this is all on his pit crew. He
Oh yeah,
is
100%.
he's third going into this pit cycle for the overtime restart, and his pit crew got him out first. So not necessarily saying that he earned it himself, but his pit crew definitely put him in the right position to for the cleanup, grand slam there in
Hmm.
the fourth slot, per se, as Hamlin would go on to lead those last two laps of overtime and win the race.
Yeah, and just as we thought Hamlin's, regular season wasn't going well, here comes the momentum for that 11 team, and that's a team you do not want to get hot in the regular season. But like you mentioned, pit crew, usually they're in the news for the wrong reasons. But man, I mean, they just killed it today. Executed all day, got the track position they needed in that overtime restart, and got the win. Um, but Bell, Reddick, Blaney, um, Byron, Bell, Reddick, Blaney round out the top five. So Byron's second. Man, I know he would have won that win, but you really can't complain with that at all. Um, but got a bunch of stage points, got a bunch of points in general, led a lot of laps, learned a lot of things for that playoff race that's coming up in the fall. So hopefully we'll see another great race at Darlington like this one was in the playoffs.
We definitely will. Playoffs ramp up everything, So if there's a track with two races, we have Richmond, early Richmond, late Richmond, early Darlington, late Darlington, early Bristol, late Bristol. The late race always seems to be quite more intense than the early race. So as if there wasn't a lot to enjoy this first race, I think that second one is going to be a great race. For lack of better words, I think it's going to be a phenomenal race later this year.
Yeah, 100%.
But you rounded out the top five.
Yeah, all you.
So I'm going to give a little applause. He was my pick to win. Chris Buescher in that 17 car, bringing it home sixth. I'm happy with that. He didn't win like I said he was gonna after the at the end of the Martinsville podcast, but a great run there for the RFK 17.
Yeah, and my pick was excuse me, Chase Briscoe. Yeah, we can just skip past my pick. Didn't have the day I thought he was going to.
It's
But
okay, a lot of cautions, gets caught on the wrong cycle rotation. He'll end up finishing 28th. But you can't win him every race. We make our picks before we even see the car that's showing up to the track for that
yeah,
driver. You don't know
100%.
what the weather's going to be. You don't know what situation that driver's going to get caught in. So, it's not a bad pick. It's a very good pick based on prior races. So I'm not gonna beat up on your pick there.
Thank you. But some notable drivers that finished the race pretty well. Byron, just going to want to touch on this guy again. Wins both stages, comes home second, led 243 laps. Just insane stuff, insane stats. I don't think we're going to see that dominant of a performance again in Darlington for a long time. Chastain, how we mentioned, we were kind of bashing him at the start. Well, he finished his seventh, kind of tells us to shut up. So super good day for him. Ty Gibbs in ninth. Kyle Busch in 10th. Zane Smith, another great finish for him, starting to ramp up the momentum for that front row team in 12th. And Todd Gilliland, his teammate, in 14th. So great stuff from front row, getting a lot of laps under their belt and having these great finishes. And teammate at Trackhouse, Daniel Suarez finishing 15th. So good stuff. Good stuff from these guys rounding out the top 15.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I feel like I'm being reeled in by this driver. I'm looking at the 24 yet again, staring at this finishing order. You already mentioned him, but not only did he finish second, lead the ton of laps, win both stages, but he also had the Xfinity fastest lap. So
Mm-hmm.
that car was beyond dominant.
Yeah.
Dominant is the word associated with that car this week, but it's just honestly, it's a shame looking at that race and realizing, man, he wasn't even talked about besides the fact that he finished second after the end of the second stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was unbelievable. I mean, I'm gonna just. I think everyone should start putting Jeff Gordon flames on their car. It's just gonna run like that. That is crazy. And he had a great throwback paint scheme to top it off.
Yeah, definitely. If you're gonna dress like Jeff Gordon, you better play the part pretty well, and he sure did at Throwback Weekend Darlington here.
Oh, 100%. But just another notable drivers. SVG finishes 20th. His best finish in a Cup Series car in his full-time season. Obviously got the win at Chicago Street Course, but that he wasn't running full-time. So he gets his best finish on a short track. Wallace in 21st. Pretty unfortunate after the day he had. Everything kind of fell apart in stage
Just
3.
another one caught on a bad pit cycle.
Yeah. Cole Custer gets his best finish in 22nd of the season. Kind of an unfortunate day for Ryan Preece in 26, who started on the front row. He doesn't have the best pit crew, and it kind of cost him a lot of spots, and track position is so key here. So unfortunate. Like I
Yeah, I
mentioned, Chase
think that brings.
Briscoe.
Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. I think that brings money into the question again for Ryan. Not Ryan Preece, but for RFK, the team in general. We talk about Brad having all his struggles, and Ryan Preece has got such a good race car, but I just don't know if they're funding the pit crew, and I think I don't think there's better places that RFK could put their money towards, but I think that team just needs more funding overall.
Yeah, and they got some good sponsors, but I just don't think it's enough for a 3-car team. So hopefully we see some moves from the big boss Brad. But man, I can only hope because I like watching RFK. They're kind of emerging as a team that I look forward to watching with the drivers that they have.
Yeah, I sure do too. They're that 4-star engine team. They're the 4-star Ford team, and they make it known. Yeah, at some points you almost forget about Team Penske, and you're like, wait, which one's the 5-star Ford team here?
Hmm.
It's kind of really cool to see what RFK has been doing with, not necessarily their lack of money, but with their new 3-car team, and I think Brad and Jack Roush are doing a really good job over there with that ownership of RFK.
Oh, 100%. But finishing out the leaderboard, Alex Bowman, like we mentioned, had a bunch of struggles. He would finish a bunch of laps down in 35th. Barry would DNF. Larson would DNF, and JJ Yeley would DNF, who we didn't talk about at all. Wasn't really covered, but just Larson, just a really tough day at the office for him. But he would it wouldn't hurt him too much in the points, as he has been very, very dominant this season.
Yeah, definitely. And for the third week in a row, I'm going to lead into your final segment here that you
All
love
year.
on your podcast, and we'll make our picks for the Bristol race, even though we know what happens, but we've had our picks in mind
Yeah.
for a while. Of course,
Just want
since
to make that clear, guys. We don't pick who's going to win after the race. We know we pick drivers before the race. I just want to make that known. I got a lot of questions about that. Okay.
And
We
we
don't.
also let each other know. So this
Yeah.
is not. We promise you. I mean, I'm sure our listeners do know that we are serious about this, because I don't think we've been right on one yet. I think you might have one right,
I have
actually.
one with Hamlin Larson at Homestead, but I've been way off on the last Q.
Yeah, so I'm going to kick off with my pick here. This car was mighty fast with Martin Truex in it in past years. So I'm going to go with the 19, Chase Briscoe, your pick from Darlington. I think he's going to put together a great race here at Bristol next week. Well, a
Good
few weeks
pick.
ago for us, but
Yeah.
next week in terms of being on Darlington Day. So
It's a very
my pick is the 19 to go to Victory Lane at Bristol.
That's a good pick. Mine from a few weeks ago. Call me boring, but I'm going Denny Hamlin again to make it a triple crown. He's just unreal at Bristol, always has been. Brings out that kind of persona in him where he gets a little cocky after the race. So I'm going for him to make it three-peat, but we already know who wins. But I have to wait for that
You might
podcast to come out to find out.
you might as well. That team's been rolling. So
Yeah. So there it
I'm
is.
looking forward to getting back to it at Bristol, and that's another great podcast there.
Yes. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for listening to the Goodyear 400 from Darlington, the Lady in Black. Hope you guys enjoyed listening. Wherever you're listening, wherever you get your podcasts. Be on the lookout again. Hopefully, sometimes this upcoming week for Bristol. We're trying to get these podcasts rolling out so we can get back on some schedule here, so we don't stay too far behind. But yeah, thanks guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone.